for joining us today, of course, for a sit-down interview and audience Q&A with Elle Johnson. Elle, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. This is great.
Yeah. Now we are recording, just so everyone knows. I'm going to start things off with a 15-minute interview or so, just talking everything about Elle's new Netflix series with Octavia Spencer. And then we're going to open it up to audience questions, at which point I'll have instruction for you guys on how to raise your hand and do the whole moderation thing from there. But quick intro for Elle, I have it written down here for you guys. She has extensive credits for the better part of 20 years in television, and for the first time, she's a co-showrunner with Janine Sherman-Berrios on the new Netflix series Self-Made, inspired by the life of Madame C.J. Walker, starring Octavia Spencer, Blair Underwood, Tiffany Haddish, and Carmen Ejogo. It's also produced by LeBron James, so you guys might know him. It's a 4-part limited series which follows the legendary C.J. Walker's unprecedented success story as the founder and owner of a haircare empire. She was considered the wealthiest African-American businesswoman and wealthiest self-made woman in America at the time of her death in 1919. So absolutely incredible, and it's clear that just from that little blurb that she was overdue for the biopic treatment. So really looking forward today to picking Ms. Johnson's brain on how it all came together. And then again, we'll open it up to the audience. So Elle, can't thank you enough for joining us today. This is really exciting to have you here.
I love talking about Madame CJ. It's such a great project, so I'm really thrilled.
Yeah. I mean, you're certainly making the press rounds now. The series premiered, was it in March? So a little while ago.
March 20th, right before we got shut down here in LA.
I know, crazy. I mean, it's crazy times, certainly. How are you holding up, by the way?
I am pretty well. We've actually, it's interesting because I feel like in some way, Madame CJ, her life was so full of struggle and she had to overcome so much, but at every step she was relentless. And I feel like her spirit has carried through in terms of this project and, you know, the coronavirus shutting everything down, but making it possible for more people to be home and streaming our series. And we had a great turnout. And so in that sense, it's just been wonderful to be able to, oddly enough, kind of connect with people more personally through all these kind of Zoom meetings. It's almost made it a lot more intimate, which is great.
Yeah. Well, tell us a bit about how this first came together. Obviously, I feel like she was overdue for the biopic treatment. And so was that your response when this opportunity arose? Like, finally, it's about time.
Oh my God, absolutely. I mean, it's funny because my agents had called me and said that there was this project about Madame C.J. Walker, and they asked me if I knew who she was or had heard of her. And I was like, I'm a Black woman in America. Yes, of course, I know who Madame C.J. Walker is. She'd just been such a part of my life growing up. And it was kind of stunning to me that nobody had ever done a picture about her. There have been documentaries about her, but you know, nobody had been able to kind of crack the code to tell her story. And I was brought in fairly late. The project started with a woman by the name of Nicole Jefferson Asher. Well, actually, let me back up. It started with Mark and Christine Holder, who optioned a book that was written by Madame Walker's great-great-granddaughter. And they then got it to Octavia Spencer because it was clear that she was the only person who could play this character. I mean, she is phenomenal in it. And Octavia then hired Nicole Jefferson Asher, who's a screenwriter, indie film writer, to kind of adapt the story into a limited series. And shortly thereafter, LeBron's company Spring Hill got involved and they sold it to Netflix. And they went to Janine Sherman-Berrios to kind of run the series. But she was running a show called Claws at the time. And so I was brought in to co-showrun with her. I was actually on a show called Bosch. So we were kind of doing double duty for a little bit there. And so between the two of us, we were handling all of the responsibilities of being a showrunner for this project.
And you, of course, have pretty extensive credits on the producing side of things for the last handful of years in television. But this is your first time stepping into the showrunner role. Was it very different from what you've done in the past?
You know, it's interesting because, as you said, I've been working in television as a writer in drama for like the last 20 years. And so I've been a second in a room before. And I feel like my experience both in the room and on set had really prepared me for what was to come. I had never worked, however, on a period piece. And period pieces come with their own particular set of, I won't say problems, but issues and challenges. Particularly when you are trying to condense a life as epic as Madam C.J. Walker's into 4 episodes. You know, having to make those decisions in terms of not only story and the creative, but how that creative is going to realistically be able to work once you get into production, and always being mindful of the fact that, you know, no matter how much you want to do, you are going to be limited by the amount of time you have in terms of getting actors into period costume, doing period hair, in terms of your prep and finding locations that are going to be suitable and kind of realistic for what would have existed back in that day. So those kind of challenges were really new to me. And I was fortunate enough to be surrounded by a production team that was as passionate about this project as we were. I mean, I really have to say that everyone who signed on to this signed on because they had some knowledge of Madam CJ and her life, and were just wanting to tell this story. So people were really kind of dedicated to whatever it takes to get this made, that's what we're going to do. And we really needed that kind of enthusiasm to wrangle the period aspect of the show.
Yeah, and in terms of that passion, it's also my understanding that when it comes to the behind the scenes talent and the behind the camera talent, a lot of the creators are Black creators, and specifically women. Was that a unique experience for you, and did it bring a different energy to bringing this story to life specifically?
It's interesting. I mean, the answer is yes and no. It was unique for me because as a writer who kind of primarily been working in the space of procedurals and cop dramas, I'm typically the only woman or person of color in the writer's room that I have been in. So to be in an environment, you know, we had a pretty small writer's room. It was only 5 writers, but, you know, all African-American writers, 1 African-American man. But to be in an environment where you kind of had that shorthand of understanding just culturally what we were breaking in terms of the stories and why we were doing things in a certain way. We had a shorthand in terms of why we were doing it. And it was also kind of different and refreshing to be able to tell our stories. I feel like that's one of the things that, you know, our stories are starting to be told, but we want to be a part of that process. And so it was really wonderful to bring people on like Kira Kelly, our DP, who was phenomenal, to get her eye on this, to have her take on the story of this, you know, incredible African-American entrepreneur. We had Demaine Davis as our producing director, and she also directed 2 of the episodes. Casey Lemmings directed the pilot and the 2nd episode. You know, 2 phenomenal African-American female directors. You know, Casey is pretty well known in the feature space, and Demaine, who worked on Queen Sugar along with Kira Kelly, but, you know, has really come into her own in terms of putting her stamp on the shows that she works for, both in front of the camera and what she puts on the camera, but also behind the scenes in terms of how she deals with the crew and the actors. She's such an incredible communicator, Demaine. She really kind of set the standard for involving everyone to such a degree that you really understand what's going on, what's in her head, so that, you know, everyone from the actors, of course, but to props and set can really bring that so that it all creates one cohesive vision. So in terms of working with African-American women, that was really a wonderful thing, because I felt like we all have, you know, we bring to it our own backgrounds and our own desires in terms of how to tell this story, and it becomes really personal. I think that kind of shows through.
Yeah, certainly. And in terms of it being a personal story, I mean, Octavia's performance is absolutely incredible, just for the record. She signed on early on as star and executive producer. How did the rest of the cast come together, and were you involved in that casting process?
Oh, absolutely. And it's funny, you know, we, when Janine and Nicole and I were kind of in what we called our secret room when we first started, we put up pictures of actors who we really wanted to be in these parts, and we got everybody that we wanted. I mean, obviously Octavia was up there, but Carmen, we had been talking about Carmen's work for a long time. I mean, a lot of us had watched the work that she'd done on the show, The Girlfriend Experience. She was also in the detective show on HBO, True Detective.
True Detective season 3.
So, yeah, so just watching her body of work, we felt like she had all of the nuances and would be able to capture everything that we wanted from the Addie Monroe character. Garrett Morris was someone who early on we were like, we have to get Garrett Morris in this, just because he's such a legend. You know, he's worked obviously a lot in the comedy space. Everyone knows him from Saturday Night Live and from other shows that he's been on, but we really felt like he could bring that humor, but also that kind of just incredible emotional resonance to the character of Cleophas. So we had in our heads, and we also had a picture of Tiffany up, because we felt like Tiffany Haddish, you know, in terms of what we wanted to do with the character of Lelia Walker and her as a person who was kind of searching out who she was, trying to get out from under her mother's shadow, but also a kind of naivete and goofiness and openness to her. We felt like that was something that Tiffany would really be able to play. And it was interesting because as we were writing the series, someone alerted us to a podcast. It was actually a sports podcast that Tiffany was on, talking about sports, and they asked her what she wanted to work on next. And she said she wanted to be involved in a project about Madam C.J. Walker. That's something that she'd always been interested in. And we heard that and we were like, oh my God, it's actually, you know, possible that we could get her. Because, you know, you put up headshots of people that you want to get and you think, okay, this is a wish list.
Yeah.
You know, it's
how often does it happen that you hit all your wish lists?
Yeah, totally. And, you know, as a writer, it helps you to kind of inspire you in terms of how you're creating the character and what you're looking for in the character, and, you know, attributes that you really want to go after, but you never think that you're going to be able to get all of these people. So we were really lucky.
Yeah. And with a performer like Tiffany in particular, I've loved over the last few years seeing her break out of what could have been a typecast situation, because she did what she does so well,
right,
in terms of the comedy space. But she's being offered these things that really show the nuance and depth that she can bring to it.
Well,
she's so great in this.
She's really smart also. I mean, she talked about how, you know, just in terms of her own planning for her career, she wants to do period pieces. Like, she knows she wants to do comedy, but she wants to do drama. She also wants to do period pieces, and we fit perfectly into that desire for her. So I think it's really smart of her to kind of branch out, because she is so talented. She has such an incredible depth of emotion and feeling, and when she taps into that, you know, it's amazing and it's great to see.
Now, of course, you're no stranger to the audition room and the casting process for some of the smaller roles, maybe the people that weren't on the wall for the wish list.
Right.
A lot of our audience today, I'm sure, are the actors and creators of the world. Is there any just standards of best practice that you'd advise for your audition room specifically?
Well, it's interesting. We shot in Canada. We shot in Toronto. So we did look at actors from LA, more from New York, because that was just more cost effective for us in terms of bringing people up to Toronto to shoot. And we looked at a lot of Canadian actors as well. But because of that, all of our casting was done on video. We were not in the room for any of them. And right. So, you know, you just get tons of people that you're cycling through and really looking and scrutinizing. And I feel like if I had any kind of advice for people when you're auditioning remotely, I would encourage you to definitely do a different take. You know, feel free to give a different interpretation, because obviously you're not in the room with us and we can't redirect you. We don't have an opportunity to say, you know, give us more or pull it back or be more specific or broader. So if you can do that on your tape, that is helpful, because then it gives us the opportunity to see that you have range, that you can take direction, that you're able to pivot. And I found that in the auditions, you know, when we were looking for people, the people who did that, that was really helpful to me. even if you didn't hit what it was we were looking for, just the ability to show that you did have range was really helpful.
Mm-hmm. To take the initiative to show that you can bring something different. Yeah. And that's so important, especially today. I mean, obviously we're speaking on video camera Zoom right now, like remote casting, self-taping, that's kind of the name of the game right now.
Yeah. And I have to be honest, I don't mind that. I mean, I know for me, it allows me to, watch auditions in a space where I'm comfortable, to rewatch them. Sometimes when you're in a room with people, and it's nice to have people right in front of you, but you're trying to get through things, you're trying to get through a list of people, and just being able to take the time and rewind and look at something over and over and really be discerning about, okay, do I feel like this person could get to where I want them to get to, or yes, they're spot on, or how do they work against somebody else that I'm considering? It's just, while it might seem like a detriment to not physically be there, I think there is a positive in allowing the people who are watching the auditions to go back and rewind and look at it more closely. And we do, so just know that we do.
Yeah, certainly. Awesome. Well, as a final question for you before we open it up to audience questions, again, you are a vet of the industry at this point, working as a producer and on your way up for about 20 years, is that right?
Yeah, yes.
Incredible. What is one piece of advice that you would give yourself when you were first starting out?
Oh, wow, that's good. Well, it's interesting because I had some rules for myself as I was starting out. One of the rules was to always take the note. Even if you don't agree with the note that you're given from executives or, your showrunners or EPs, to always attempt to do it. And if it doesn't work, then you can say, yeah, I tried the note and it didn't work, but at least try it, because just as a writer, that's going to help you grow. Make an attempt to see if you can understand what somebody else is looking for. And to always be respectful, even if you're in a situation where you maybe don't respect someone or you feel like you're not being respected, to always be respectful, because people just want to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is, that's invaluable. And I feel like having kind of figured that out early on, I think that kept me in good stead and also to be somebody that other people want to be around, because we spent so many hours together. I mean, when we were shooting Man of CJ, we were shooting, 14-hour days. So that's a really long time to have to be with people. So you want to be someone that people can be around and are happy to be around. I think that goes a long way.
Yeah. Especially in the beginning, you want to be the person that people want to work with. Work begets work in that way. So to be respectful, even if you're not necessarily feeling that way, can certainly go a long way, I imagine. Awesome. Well, if you don't mind, we'll open it up to some audience questions. Thank you everyone for tuning in today. We have about 280 people watching right now, which is awesome. The way we're going to run this, if you're new to the Zoom seminar with Backstage, the way we're going to run this is you are all on mute. The way that you get my attention as the moderator is raise your hand. I see 2 people already have. You have the option to raise your hand in the bottom right hand of your corner, or bottom right hand corner of your screen rather, and have your camera on. We are recording this for our YouTube channel, so we like that face-to-face on-camera interaction, and we will make our way down the list. We have until 3:45 or so I'll get to as many of you as I can in the next 25 minutes. And please be respectful of Elle's time. 1 question each will suffice. And thanks again. And Elle, thank you for the quick chat. It's great picking your brain a little bit.
Thank you.
All right, so let's see here. Who's going to be first? Let's first go to Charlie Rhea. Charlie, you are off mute.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Good. Right. Hi. So my question is, obviously this industry is very competitive with loads of people wanting to succeed in it. This is specifically to a screenplay. What would you recommend? It's kind of difficult to word this. How would you recommend you make your script unique so that it can stand out in a sea of others and really get somebody's attention? if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that definitely makes sense. I think what you really want to do is write something that you're passionate about, and write something that is personal to you, because only you are going to be able to bring that aspect to the story, right? Like if it's something that's really personal to your experience, something that you can really speak to, nobody else is going to be able to have your take on it. So put your stamp on it by just being true to what it is that you want to say. I think that is kind of, I mean, I always try to do that as well, just to write stories about things that I really care about, that I have an opinion on, something that is going to carry me through the years sometimes that it can take to get a project made. And you really need that. It's got to be something that you're so passionate about and so interested in that you'll be able to stick with it over the long haul. And I think that's, you know, you can really tell when somebody is intimate and knows a subject matter well and has a kind of real, truthful experience with it, that will come out on the page, and just let that come out on the page.
Okay, thank you so much.
Oh, sure.
Great, thank you, Charlie. Next up, we're going to go to Vicki Cox.
Hi.
Vicki, you're off mute. There you go.
Hi, how are you all today? Everyone healthy and safe, I hope. Cold up here in Canada. I have being medically released from the military, and I'm at a point in my life where I'm wanting to introduce myself to the business. I have lots of ideas. Of course, I'm 43, full of experiences, and I want to make that next step. I'm Canadian, so most of the projects I have to do are in Canada, but I want to make the bridge. I really want to make the bridge. There's stories to tell, too many stories to tell.
Right.
And the other question was, have you ever considered making a piece on Black women and their role in the world wars that we've had?
Interesting. So your first question is more about how to kind of get your projects made in America, or?
I
would say don't even worry about that. What you need to focus on is you know, putting together something, whether you're writing something that is undeniable. You know, just making sure that what you are putting on the page is fantastic and something that people can't turn away from. And I know that sounds like, okay, that sounds like an impossible task, but I feel like when you're writing something, you know when you're writing something that is on the right track, that's working. And you also know when things aren't working. You have to be honest and brutally honest with yourself when you're just handing in something that's good enough. When you have reached that plateau where you're like, I can't look at this anymore, so I'm just gonna put it out there and see what happens. Don't do that. Like, you need to then step back, take a break, have other people read it, but revisit it until you are handing in something that you were like, I have done everything that I can. This is the best that I can do. It's ready to go out into the world, because the minute you turn it over in your head, you're not going to be like, oh, but I should have fixed that one thing. Like, you should be handing it in and be waiting for people to wanting to do it. And I think that's, you know, and that takes a lot of work. That takes a lot of ability to kind of self-edit, to be self-critical. But I feel like we can all do that. It's just you have to kind of hold yourself to a higher standard to get the work to that place. And then you won't have to worry about getting it made in Canada or the US. If you're handing in something that's good, people are going to want to make it. I want to also say that even if you're handing in something that's good, we all know that the marketplace has its own outer influences. You know, there are sometimes things that are outside of our control as artists, writers, and actors, and to not let that discourage you. Because anytime that you're writing something or putting something out there, you're getting the mileage of putting in the work and getting the experience. So I think that is also valuable.
Journey.
Yeah, just holding yourself to that kind of standard. And in terms of your second question, I mean, there's so many amazing untold stories. I don't even know what those stories would be, but it sounds like you do, and it sounds like you should.
I do. Canada's been working really hard to eradicate military sexual trauma, and I was spearheaded that movement a few years back. And I just want to take a snapshot in time about the third wave of women.
Then do it. You should. That
I
sounds
know.
like something you'd have a great insight into. So I would say go for it.
Awesome. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Next question. Let's go over to Jocelyn Sands. Jocelyn, you are off mute.
So close. Jocelyn Sands, like insane.
All right.
Hi, thank you so much. Congrats on your show.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I have a question about casting. So you have your wall of your people, which I totally understand because those are your dream people. I've had a similar experience. However, what does the person do who doesn't have a name that wants to be like put up there on that wall in some shape or form? Because I spent my 20s having children, so I'm kind of diving in now.
Great. Well, there are parts for women of all ages now. Like, I feel like it's opening up so much. I mean, in terms of it's interesting because in terms of getting on that wall when writers are sitting in the room alone and thinking about it, that's going to be a little bit harder because for us, again, it's one of those outside marketplace forces where you're like, who are the names, the talent that, you know, our buyers, our studio and our network are going to want to put in this so that they can be successful. Right. So it's a little bit harder to get up there for those parts, but not impossible, obviously. I mean, in terms of other parts, I think, you know, I just think working as much as you can, you know, like now we're so used to, like, I come across people all the time now just on YouTube or even on Twitter. Like there are a couple of actors who will post their things on Twitter and I'll see it on my feed and I'll think, my God, that person is really talented. Like, I'm just gonna keep an eye out for them because I can see what they can do and they're so interesting and you get an insight into them. And so I feel like now with social media, there's a whole other landscape for you to get yourself in front of people in a way that's a bit more casual. That's not kind of like, you know, asking for the favor of like, stick your neck out, spend political capital on someone who's unknown. There's a softer way to do that, which is, let me just get into your feed through all of these things that I'm posting. Like if you have scenes that you've done or, you know, anything that you can post on social media, I think that would be a really good way because quite honestly, I've been tracking a couple of people that I'm like, this person's really interesting and I want to see what they can do. And so they're in the back of my head.
All right. Well, that's cool to know. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Jocelyn. Next up, let's go over to Vance Bradford. Vance,
okay.
All you.
Yes, I'm unmuted. Elle, thank you very much for doing this. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm all right. I'm calling in from Brooklyn, New York. And
right.
I wanted to ask you about, did you begin as a writer? Would you say you began just your interest as a writer?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's what I'm from Queens originally, and I wanted to
New York in the house? Okay.
I wanted to get into television writing. So I started in New York, but I quickly realized at the time that I started, you really needed to be out in LA. So I moved to LA to start writing.
Okay. So can you talk a little bit about how over your years you leveraged your relationships to arrive at the position that you're in currently?
Well, that's really interesting. I started in New York. I worked on a television show as a script coordinator, and a lot of people will tell you that there's kind of like no structure for getting into writing, right, which may be true for screenplays, but not true for television, because the structure for getting into television is to work in a writer's room as either a writer's assistant or a script coordinator, because you are working directly with the writers. And I had the good fortune to work as a script coordinator with a bunch of writers, one of whom was a gentleman named Eric Overmeyer. And I would come in on the weekends to work on my scripts, my own projects. He would be in on the weekends working on scripts for the show. He saw how dedicated I was, how I was always working. He went on to a show called Homicide: Life on the Streets, and he remembered me. And he asked me if I wanted to write a freelance episode for that show. And Eric became a mentor of mine. And Eric has hired me to be on Bosch. He hired me as an EP on Bosch. He's hired me to be on Law & Order. he just helped me every step of the way. And it's funny because when he asked me if I wanted to write an episode of Homicide, he split a script with me, which was incredibly generous. And at the time I didn't realize, that's basically like taking money out of your own pocket to give a young writer a shot. And so I wrote a script with him that was directed by Catherine Bigelow.
Wow.
That was my first piece of television writing. So, for me, getting into it was a matter of putting myself in the orbit of other writers, other people that I wanted to be like. And fortunately, somebody helped me. I mean, Eric reached down and pulled me up. And I try to do that anytime I can as well.
Fantastic. Well, you were prepared for the moment, so that I see how it worked. It worked very much succinctly. So thank you very much for your contribution. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Great question, Vance. Gonna go over to Sicily Alexander. Sicily, you're off mute.
Awesome. Hi there, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Hey.
Yeah, awesome. Hi there. Thanks so much for doing this. I did want to say I watched the Madam C.J. Walker series like in one sitting. It was an awesome evening. Thanks for that. My question for you is, I, like one of our other panelists sorry, I'm nervous. I'm relatively new to entertainment. A lot of my career has been in IT as a computer programmer. I'm a impending empty nester. I've been working on acting, but I've recently discovered writing, and I found that I absolutely love it. Is there, or from what you know, is there a lot of precedents of actors that actually become writers?
Oh my God, yes.
I know there's Bradley Cooper and Angelina Jolie, those big names, but besides that, is that
actors who become writers? Oh yeah. Well, first of all, let me tell you, Octavia started out as a writer. So
I didn't know that.
When she first came to LA was a writer. I know tons of people who have started as actors and then because they felt like they weren't seeing parts for themselves, started writing parts for themselves. And that happens all the time. I mean, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, Mindy Kaling, like there are a ton of actors who are also writing for themselves. Issa Rae, like these are people who you can totally do that. And you should do that because I think that actors who write, it's really a gift because you understand what the actor needs in a character. I mean, and I have often tried to take either an acting class or to really understand the acting process so that when I'm putting words in a page, I'm able to help the actors really move within a scene because I realize that sometimes as a writer, I don't think of things in the same way as an actor does. Or as a director, like you're looking at it from a totally different lens. So it is incredibly helpful for someone with acting experience to start writing. So yeah, keep doing it.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. Let's go over to Diane. Diane, you are off mute.
Hey, thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. I want to ask, so I have an idea for a show that I've been sort of working on a bit. I've written part of the pilot and working on outlining the story. I'm wondering at what point is it the right point to take it to, or to try to get it out there to networks or producers and stuff? Should I have a few episodes written as a pilot plus an outline for the season enough? What's the right target there?
I think when you're writing something on spec, I think put all of your energies into the pilot and knowing that what you're also going to have to do is pitch the series. So you're going to want to know what happens in that first season, what the character arcs are, where your characters are going to end up at the end of the season. But I wouldn't say that you should invest the time in writing other episodes for that because quite frankly, the studio and the network are going to want to have input. They're going to want to feel like they're able to put their brand, their stamp on it. And if you get too far down the road, that might make people a little bit closed-minded in terms of what they think they're buying. But it's great to write something on spec, especially if it's something that you're passionate about. And it will also help you kind of get that voice and tone down on the page, which is one of the hardest things to pitch. So I would say put your energies into writing a fantastic pilot, and also have along with that kind of a pitch document where you can outline in more detail who the characters are, not only what the show is about ostensibly, but what it's really about, like that second thing, that deeper thing, the themes of it, and where those episodes are going to go. And just know your marketplace as well, like whether you are pitching for, pitching for a network is one of those things that's constantly morphing and changing these days. But if you're going to pitch your show for network, then know that you have to come up with 22 episodes in a season, and that's a lot. Versus pitching for streaming or even basic cable, where it tends to be more along the lines of 10 episodes. So just kind of understanding the scope of what it is that you're telling.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Also, I would say to you, if you have the energy and the time to write a second and a third script for that, put that energy into writing a second and a third pilot, because then your chances are increased of selling something. And truly, people, it's a collaborative thing. Your studio and your network are going to have notes and are going to want to be involved in the shaping of it.
All right, makes sense. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
I love that insight. Thank you. Let's go over to Dia Sunny. Dia, you are off, or one moment. There, now you're off mute.
Thank you so much for your time. Firstly, this has just been extremely inspiring. I work in a foreign market in India, actually, and I've done a few films as lead. And after seeing Parasite and so many, I think always foreign films and any type of film from anywhere, it's been really, really inspiring. I'm actually a medical student who became an actor, and I have the rights of a book because of a family ancestry relation, and I've been writing a script. I have a question in regards to if you hit a roadblock, or if you get some sort of feedback and there is someone that is interested in buying the script for like for a streaming service, so it has that worldwide release. What do you do in terms of staying true to your voice, but like trying to maneuver?
Right. So you actually have the rights to this book, and you are currently writing a screenplay, and there's some interest in your screenplay or in the book?
So there's interest in the book, and so there's a group of 4 or 5 of us. There's one who's a producer's son, and there's 4 or 5 of us who are working on this project, and we've gotten feedback actually quite recently, and it's probably not going in the exact vision we had, which I understood that would be probably what would happen. But how can you, what is the best advice in trying to?
That's a really tough one, because I understand, just speaking from the writer's perspective, if you have a take on something and that's the take that you really want to explore, it can be hard to pivot, and it can be hard to kind of give up your idea of what something should be. So you really have to kind of decide why it is you're telling this story. Is this story something that you really just have to tell and get out there, and you're dedicated to the way that you want to tell it, in which case stay the course and hope that you find producers who are more in line with what you want to say. Because truly, if there are people who are interested in the book and they have their own take on it, it's likely that at some point you're going to get edged out. I mean, and that's the other thing to kind of realize when you're looking at, properties, outside properties, or IP. As artists, you are bringing something to it. There's a reason that something in that property speaks to you that you have to get out. And you have to honor that. And you honor that by protecting the script that you're writing and staying true to the vision that you have. And that's what's going to make your writing of this thing shine and of interest to somebody else. You can find other producers. I mean, I get that it's probably, when you're new to something, you feel like, oh, there's only one person interested and I'm never going to find anybody else. And that's not true. The fact that somebody is interested should say to you, I'm on the right path and I'm just going to keep on my path. But, it's tricky, because when you're dealing with IP, everyone brings to it their own experience and their own reason as an artist for wanting to do it. And everyone's reason is going to be different, but you just have to kind of stay true to what you want to say and stay the course, and just trust that you're going to be able to knock this out of the park and stick with it, and you will find other people who understand your vision and who want to do it your way.
Thank you. That's amazing. That's really nice to hear. So I think I'll just, we were just trying to figure out what to do, but that's amazing advice. Thank you.
Good. You're welcome.
Thank you, Dia. We have time for one more question. So for this last one, I'm going to go over to Tonya Todd. Tonya, all you.
Hi, thank you for sharing your time with us today.
Sure.
I started writing because I wasn't seeing enough opportunities for actors who looked like me. And I'm concerned, once I start getting interest in my screenplays, what if I get in a position where they don't actually want to use me as the actor too? What would be the best course of action for something like that?
I
Because
mean,
if I'm writing about something I'm passionate about, I want to be a part of the project.
right.
But I don't want to lose an opportunity because I was too stubborn and no, you must use me, you know?
Well, there are a couple of answers. I mean, as soon as you started talking, I just flashed on Sylvester Stallone, you know, locking himself in his apartment for however many months to write Rocky, insisting that he was going to be the actor in it. Like, you know, sometimes you just have to say, look, this is my vehicle. I wrote this for me. Vin Diesel, same thing. Like, sometimes you just gotta stick to what it is that you want to do. And I think that when we're starting off, like just as I was saying to the last person, when we're starting out, we feel like there are limited opportunities. We feel like there's only one opportunity. And that is just not true. You are creating opportunities. You can write this piece and write this piece for yourself and know that this is a thing that you were going to stick with to the end so that you can be in it. But you can write something else. That's the beautiful thing about being a writer. You can just create something from nothing. So you can write something else that you can sell. But there's never just one opportunity. If people are showing interest in you and your work, that should say to you, not like, oh, here's my one chance. That should say to you, like, I have just cracked the door open and people see me and I have something that people want. So let me just keep doing what I'm doing and creating more opportunity. I think that if you really feel like this is a part that you have to do, that you want to do, then save it for yourself. Use this as a vehicle to meet as many people as possible. You know, don't just stick with this one producer. Go to other people and say, this is what I've written, until you find that person who's like, all right, I'm going to take a chance on this girl. You know, just stick with it. I think also part of that question is just knowing how daunting it is to have to keep going when you feel like, okay, I have an opportunity, and am I being foolish and stubborn to say, no, it has to be me? And I think you just have to dig deep into that reserve of passion and put that into your project and say, I'm going to keep going and keep looking for somebody who wants to work with me, and see what else can come out of it. Maybe they'll ask you to write something else, and that will enable you to hold on to your project, but write something new for them. So just leverage that in every way, in terms of getting people to look at you as an actor, in terms of getting people to read you and look at you as a writer. They may say, like, well, we can't have this project of hers, but we can do something else with her. It's just create more opportunities from this for yourself.
All right, thank you so much.
And what a great note to leave things on. Thanks for the question, Tonya. And thank you, especially Ms. Johnson, for joining us today. This was such an informative chat, and we really appreciate your time. Congratulations on Self-Made. If no one had, or if anyone out there hasn't seen it yet, it's 4 great episodes on Netflix. Go stream it now. And I would like to take the opportunity quickly, just while I have you. If we didn't get to your question, we have some guides here on our editorial product at Backstage that might help you out. Elle Johnson has actually been featured in our Q&A series running the show, and that link is right here. It's a series of interviews with showrunners like Elle, giving a behind-the-scenes look at what they do, how they do it, and advice to others who want to get started. So if you want to check that out, feel free. And thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Elle, is there anything that you'd like to leave us with?
I would just like to say, first of all, I'm kind of blown away by the people who are asking questions and how many people are in here. And it's really inspiring. And I want to inspire you and just say to all of you, I know sometimes it's hard. It feels like you're working in a vacuum, but every day that you're working on your craft, you're getting better, and just keep doing it. Don't step out of line. Don't let anyone tell you that you're too old or you're too this or too that to be doing this. You have a story to tell, you have a talent, and just keep working on it and keep going, and just don't ever stop. You can do this, you deserve to do this, you should do this.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing your time and wisdom with us again, Elle. We'll be in touch. Yeah.
Great. Thanks,
All right.
guys.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. You have a good day and stay healthy out there. Bye-bye.
Bye.